listening to Policing Matters on policeone.com. I'm your host, Jim Dudley. Hey, welcome back. And imagine this, a barricaded suspect, possibly armed inside his own home. It may be booby-trapped. There may be hostages. We just don't know. And then after a shot is fired, the decision to send someone inside, or should we say something, is made. So who's going to volunteer to be first through the door? Well, we are getting some interesting technology to help us in situations when our only options are either to wait and lay siege or send in officers, maybe to face a dangerous situation where the suspect has the advantage. Well, today we are hearing from a returning guest, Don Redmond, retired Chula Vista PD captain and forerunner to the drone program there. Welcome, Don. And then we also have with us CEO and founder of BRINC, Blake Resnick, CEO and founder, and the drone technology company. Blake, I've been on your website. Really cool. I see your workbench. I want to make mine look like yours. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Yeah, so we're going to drop your link in the show notes and some more background on you and Don for our listeners. I encourage them to check out the site. You've got some really cool law enforcement technology. I read that you created a fusion reactor in your garage. What's your background and how'd you get into law enforcement?
Yeah, I know that one freaked out the neighbors pretty bad. I had a good time though. So I think worth it. It was doing deuterium fusion. So it was basically this big vacuum chamber that was backfilled with deuterium gas, which I couldn't get at the time because I was like 13 or 14. But I could get heavy water, which I did electrolysis on, and then collected deuterium for my nuclear fuel. And then, sort of the way it worked was through what's called like electrostatic acceleration. So there's a center tungsten grid that was charged to like negative 40,000 volts. And then an outer grid, which was sort of held at a ground potential that fuses all the gas inside the chamber, creates something called deuterons. And then those are charged. So they're accelerated up to like almost relativistic speeds and then smashed into each other. And that's kind of what causes the fusion events. So yeah, that was a really good time. Sort of my formal training in engineering was also kind of strange. I worked at McLaren Automotive when I was 14. So I think I was their youngest ever engineering intern. Worked on parts of the 720S brake cooling system. Then went over to Tesla Motors, where I worked on battery technology, controls engineering. Also briefly met Elon, so kind of life goal fulfilled with that. And then most recently, I worked under the VP of R&D over at DJI, so world's largest drone company by far. Did the fusion reactor project, a couple other kind of similar projects, and nuclear physics and aerospace. Ended up dropping out of school with a Teal fellowship. So this billionaire paid me like $100K to drop out, and then started working on BRINC. So yeah, that's kind of my personal history prior to the company.
Yeah, so BRINC is about drones and some other technology. Was there any catalyst to get you into the law enforcement field or aspect?
Yeah, very much so. So I was working on a couple different drone projects, and then October 1 happened in in my hometown. I grew up in Vegas. It's actually where I'm calling in from today. I knew a lot of people that were directly affected by that event, and
you're talking about the Harvest Festival.
That's right. Yeah, the shooting from the Mandalay Bay. And that is what initially got me thinking, like maybe there's a place for modern technology in the hands of first responders when dealing with those types of events.
Yeah, well, that's a noble calling to take what you have and use your talents towards saving lives. It's great. You've got something out, something breaking, the Lemur 2. What's that about?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I mean, kind of the way any of this came about was, October 1 happened. I ended up cold calling the SWAT team, who surprisingly agreed to meet with me when I was 17 or 18, but they did, and very grateful for that. We met, we talked about October 1, but we also talked about the rest of their job, hostage situations and barricades and high risk warrant searches and, all these things that they have to do on a regular basis. And what I walked away from that thinking is, if they just had a tool to get eyes and ears places that would be dangerous to send a person, that is a capability that would save lives for them regularly. And I thought I could build that. So Lemur is basically exactly what I described. It's something, designed to fly up to a building, break out a pane of glass, fly inside, first drone in the world with like a glass breaker, look around, fly around in GPS denied and zero light conditions, push open interior doors. If it ever crashes and lands on its back, it can flip itself over, take back off and continue a mission. And then when it finds someone, it's also the first drone in the world with a two-way audio system. So you can put on a crisis negotiation team member and use it sort of like a flying cell phone, try to de-escalate the situation.
Nice.
So yeah, that's what Lemur is. And as you mentioned, now we also just released Lemur 2, which is all of the sort of critical features of Lemur, plus a lot of much more advanced software and autonomy. So this time it has a full position hold function. Take your hands off the sticks, the drone will just kind of stay parked midair. That works in zero light and GPS denied conditions, which we're proud of. As it's flying around, it's generating a full 3D point cloud. So it's making a 3D model of the space, which can then be exported on a handheld controller as a 2D floor plan. So you can see exactly what you're about to walk into before you make entry into the structure. It has a mesh networking feature now. So if you're dealing with a large commercial building, really hard to get signal from one end all the way through to the other, just through a lot of concrete. Now drones act as signal repeaters. So you can send in one, a third of the way through the building, and then that'll act as a network coverage expander. So you can send in another drone even further. That works in zero light very well. In any types of conditions underground, for example. And yeah, lots of other stuff that's really just scratching the surface.
Yeah. So, I mean, what's really fascinating is the ability to get the 3D mapping. I think about, some of the systems that we have post crime scene, where we could set up a 3D plotter in the middle of the room and it'll give us all the outline. Did you steal that from Prometheus, where the guy throws the drones up in the air and then plots out the whole spaceship?
Actually, kinda. We actually watched that when we were first designing the system in the engineering team, and we talked about it with marketing and stuff as well. It's actually a great visualization of basically what we've built. It's pretty similar.
Yeah.
I would say though, we weren't even sure when we first started developing the product we were going to expose that to users, because we needed the point cloud ourselves in order to do position hold. We needed it also for obstacle avoidance functions to kind of teach the drone what's around it. So it's ultimately just a very practical sensor to help teach the drone where it is, how it's moving, and what's nearby. But once we started visualizing the data that was coming out of it, we were like, wow, this could really be useful to our end users too. Especially, I'd say, in 2D mode, because with that, you're just seeing a floor plan. You're seeing rooms, you're still seeing walls, like all of that is totally exposed. So we thought it could be really helpful for planning missions, for example, before operators might have to make entry.
Yeah, absolutely. And I recall our own SWAT teams literally using blue tape or duct tape to map out how they would go through room to room. Really good function there. What are the challenges? What were the challenges you came up against? Did you research what a drone might encounter in an environment that might be hostile, right? So there's a guy inside. If I'm a bad guy and the drone comes in, my first move is to grab something and throw at it, or maybe shoot at it.
Yeah, I mean, I ultimately I went on call for 6 months. So after that first meeting with Vegas Metro, I went back to my garage, engineered like the first version of Lemur, showed that off to them. They did not like it at all, and sort of explained to me why it was wrong. Actually, it's funny you mentioned that. At one point, one of the SWAT operators grabbed a towel, walked up to the drone that was hovering in front of this entire crowd, slapped it out of the sky, threw this thing in the props, and explained to me that this was going to happen in the first 5 minutes of our first SWAT call out. So yeah, they definitely articulated that. So that didn't go great, but they kind of talked me through what had to be upgraded. So I went back to my garage, more actually my mom's kitchen at this time. She also didn't like, but we lived with it for a while. Totally re-engineered the drone, showed off that version of the team. This time they were like, this is better. We'd love to test it on submissions, and you've been decent to work with. So if you're interested, we'd love to invite you out to come with us on some of those. So I signed a ride-along waiver, and for the next 6 months, would basically call out with Metro, Vegas Metro SWAT. And more so than anywhere else, I would say that's where the product was actually developed, like paying close attention to where things worked and where it went well, but even closer attention to where things didn't work, and then re-engineering those subsystems so they would on the next mission. And yeah, I just kind of lived it with them, which was critical, because they are really hostile, challenging environments. They're hoarder houses almost all the time, trash up to your knees. People hide in these really tight, confined areas and attics all of the time. I didn't realize that. There are always zero light conditions. Frequently, you have to get signals through, many dozens of walls. There are a lot of challenges. So that was really an education.
Nice. Okay. Hey, Don, you've been flying drones for a while now. You started in Chula Vista. What did you see in a drone that has finally come to fruition here with BRINC and the Lemur?
Yeah, it's amazing to see how technology has improved the way that we're responding to calls for service. So, I was on the SWAT team for a number of years, and I remember the days of, kicking in the doors and going in and being the first one, to your point, being the first one through the door and not knowing what's on the other side. And slowly through tactics, we backed out and, did the surround and call out, but then it's a waiting game, right? Do we even know if they're in there? They're not picking up the phone. At some point, we still have to go into that residence or that building, not knowing what's on the other side of the door. What's really fascinating is the Lemur, right? What Blake and his team, when I was at Chula Vista and saw what BRINC had done with the Lemur S, to be able to allow first responders to, from a safe distance, be able to enter that residence, and not only the safety for first responders, but the safety for the community. Right, we've seen and we've heard the national tragedies throughout the country of SWAT members getting shot or community members getting shot. Is there another way to reimagine how we respond to these calls? And that's what the Lemur S and now the Lemur 2 provides us: safety for first responders and safety for the community.
Yeah, and in Chula Vista, you had the ability to send the drone out ahead of teams or an officer in a suspicious situation, and now you have a lot more functionality.
Yeah, we've seen the progressions of drones, from the overwatch of drone as a first responder to be able to get out there ahead of time, see what's, doing the overwatch. And then you have the tactical drone deployments where you're able to just fly around a building and maybe look in the windows if you're on a call out or surround out. But then to have the ability now to put a glass breaker on a drone, fly it up to the window, break the window, and if, the drone should, have something happen to it and it falls to the ground, flip it over and immediately get back up and fly indoors. But then to have a flying cell phone to be able to not just see the person, but to be able to communicate with them, to be able to give them directions as to why we're there and what we want of them, and that we can resolve it peacefully.
The lemur is live. It's in the field now, so to speak. So what have you heard back from actual incidents?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to take that to start. And then Don, if you'd like to share anything else, please do. So yeah, I mean, at this point, we work with around 400 public safety agencies in the US and world. And we've done many thousands, perhaps tens of thousands of missions at this point. So this thing has really seen some service at this point. I would say, I'll maybe leave it up to Don to share some of the sort of tactical missions that we've accomplished. But what we've noticed after deploying this for a while is it's incredibly useful in tactical situations, but also very useful in a wide array of other public safety missions. So, for example, it was deployed during the Surfside condominium collapse when half of that structure initially came down. One half of the condo was still standing, which was a major threat to first responders on the ground looking for survivors in the rubble pile. So we were able to take Lemur S, fly it underground that section of building, have structural engineers viewing the live video feed in a virtual reality headset, calling out to a pilot, I want to look at this column, I want to look at that column. And the data that we collected actually partially informed their decision to do a controlled demolition of that still standing portion of the building. So that was one. We donated over 50 airframes to Ukrainian first responders to help deal with, apartment buildings that were hit by cruise missiles. And just this week, we've actually had personnel and equipment in Turkey looking for survivors and IDing bodies and trying to assess the stability of still standing buildings over there in response to that massive earthquake. So there are a lot of missions where this ultimately makes sense.
Yeah, and to benefit more than law enforcement, but the other public safety aspects as well.
Yeah, no doubt. I don't know, Don, you have any good stories of lemur deployments and tactical situations you've heard recently?
Yeah, there's a lot of as Blake said, a lot of tactical teams that are using them. I don't want to say specifically which agencies, but I've seen videos of a SWAT team that really just tore a house apart trying to have a subject come out who was armed. They were surrounding for hours, and they ultimately sent the drone in. And as Blake said earlier, that these residents usually are not these well-kept houses. There's a lot of material and debris and everything. But then found the subject that was sitting in the chair, and they were able to land the drone and then communicate with him successfully to have him come out peacefully. And these are the ultimate the outcomes that we want in public safety, to be able to communicate with somebody for a successful resolution, to have them come out voluntarily as opposed to us going in and getting them. I heard of one agency was able to use it successfully in a tent. There was a homeless encampment, and they were able to fly it into the tent and make sure that the person was safe to go in there and make entry. And the benefits, the Lemur S is an outstanding platform, but the Lemur 2 is now a leap in technology for our first responders. And we listen very much to our first responders as to what do they want, where are areas of improvements. And with the new camera, we have a gimbal now that the camera can look up and down, where before we didn't have that ability. It is much easier to fly the drone, especially with position hold, thermal capabilities. I think our customers and public safety is really going to like the new Lemur 2 even more than the Lemur S. And I know, as Blake said and you said earlier, the idea of having a mapping software as it's flying through there to be look for tactical teams, be able to use before they go in there. And I know a number of tactical teams, my team specifically also, where if there was an apartment building, we would be knocking on the door to another apartment, to seeing what the layout was, and can we walk through your apartment to see what this apartment looks like compared to the one that we're at. Now we have the ability to do that in real time.
And even if you can get the records or floor plans from the city or looking on Zillow, how often are those accurate, or have the building been modified after the fact? It happens enough. So with this, they're generated its actual ground truth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I could think of some other applications while you're talking about evacuation. Say there's a fire spreading or something. If you could send the drone through with maybe a program message to evacuate, it would just really decrease the number of law enforcement officers going knocking on door to door. I mean, eventually they're going to actually have to clear it, but at least you get that first pass through with the message, probably through multiple languages at some point. De-escalation, so huge in law enforcement today. And I could see every situation, Don, every situation is so, unique. If all things were in place, I could see the drone taking the place of officers on an inner perimeter, moving them back and dealing with the drone rather than forcing an issue where you may have to, neutralize the suspect.
Yeah, I mean, we've heard the national message that, public safety, law enforcement, we need to reimagine police response, right? The idea of, the community expects us to de-escalate, to have time and distance, and we have the ability with technology to do that from a safe distance, to keep first responders safe, as I said earlier, but more importantly, just to keep the community safe, that officers and public safety has all of the pertinent real-time information that they need to make informed decisions. And that's what our drones, the Lemur S and now the Lemur 2 is providing.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Hey, this is a little off topic, but Blake, you may have heard that there was a controversy in San Francisco, where I'm from, my old department, and blew my mind, but they got approval from the legislative bodies there to arm an EOD robot, a bomb robot, with a bomb. So in a situation where you may have an armed suspect, to deliver an explosive capability on that suspect. Of course, a few days later, after the media, criticism, they rolled it back and said, well, okay, maybe not so fast. They're going to look at it again at some point. But we do not have the capability of delivering a live munition to a suspect. Do you ever see that kind of application of delivering gas, or even a less lethal weapon, or even lethality at some point?
Yeah, I mean, I think the challenge with that is it just opens Pandora's box. I think we're better off with that being a human decision for a long time. Mm-hmm. That's my take. I think this isn't the first time we've heard about that kind of deployment, though. I seem to remember a similar situation in Dallas where a couple of officers got shot, and they had to send in a robot with an explosive charge. And it's just it's hard to parse like the situations where that is appropriate and could save lives versus cost them unnecessarily. And then, I mean, potential misuse of something like that could be very bad, or if it got hacked by some third party, that could also be devastating. So it's just easy to imagine that going poorly in a lot of different circumstances. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw it in our lifetimes, far future, but I think we're all probably better off with this, really just remaining a human decision for a very long time.
Got it. Don, anything to add on that?
Like Blake said, it's a slippery slope, right? Drones, and it's something that we in public safety really need to be transparent and work with our community ahead of time, right? To be, in the situation in Dallas, 5 officers were murdered. It wasn't just one person making that decision. He ran it up through the chain of command. But ultimately, we know what the outcome was. I think police agencies, and I found this in my career, where we were successful, is you really have to work with your community. You have to understand what their expectations are of you as the public servant, right? In community policing. So yeah, that's a tough situation, and it is definitely a slippery slope, but it's something that we really need to think out, long and hard, and have a lot of people thinking about what is the outcome that we want here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think on the other end of the spectrum, the development of the lemur gives the ability to see what's going on inside, maybe a hot zone where you still have an armed suspect, but gets us to be able to see better where we can get to survivors, maybe people that are bleeding out that otherwise wouldn't survive unless we got in quickly. So great application there. And Blake, I think you're well on your way to mission accomplished, to what you set out when you thought about the Harvest Festival in Las Vegas and the application there. Good job.
No, I really appreciate it. I mean, it's just been an honor serving this community, and it's it's work that really matters and has life or death implications. And I just feel very grateful to be in a position where we can do something to help in some small way.
Yeah, well, thanks. I mean, law enforcement's been behind the curve in technology for so many years, and it's great to see the contributions by people like you with the knowledge, and then applying it to public safety practices. Appreciate it. Hey, thanks both of you for jumping on and sharing, and we can't wait to see. We're going to drop the links in the show notes so our listeners can check it out. And thanks. Where are you guys going to be? Where else can we see the BRINC technology?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much every major public safety trade show. We're all over the place. And if anyone's interested in seeing a more personalized demo of our technology, maybe at their sites, we are very happy to fly out and show you what we've built in person. So you can just go to brinkdrones.com and request a demo, and we'd be happy to meet with you.
Oh, very cool. Yeah, friend of mine, Jason Potts, just took over in Las Vegas, and I'm sure he'll be knocking on your door real soon.
Okay, we can't wait.
All right. Hey, thanks, guys. Take good care and appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Jim.
All right. Hey, to our listeners, hope you enjoyed the show. Check out the links. And if you're going to any of the shows, the SHOT Show or IACP or an FBINA or SWAT show, get there and check out BRINC, run it for yourself, and let us know what you think. If you're using one at your agency, drop me a line at policingmatters@policeone.com. That's policingmatters@policeone.com. Hey, thanks for listening. Stay safe. Hope to check in again with you real soon.